Greg Pruitt here with Idaho Dispatch, and this is episode 15 of the recap, where we're going to cover all of the latest news articles that we have done on the Idaho Dispatch, and hopefully I can find a date and a time that works best to do this live stream, obviously at 12:09 p.m. Mountain Time on a Tuesday. Maybe not the best time to get some live feedback. Love to have you guys in the chat, letting us know what's going on. It is November 19th, 2024. We are almost to Thanksgiving, and it's a great time to be alive. I think at least a lot of our audience is probably relieved that Donald Trump has won the presidency, and not that it was any big surprise here in Idaho, but we are excited to be with you guys. We are excited to talk about some of the latest stories that we have been working on. But before I get into kind of the latest stories that the Idaho Dispatch has been covering, wanted to go over a couple things really quick. And the first would be thank you, a huge thank you to all of you who were praying for our family yesterday, as my 4-year-old, who's like the size of a 7-year-old, the kid is huge. He's off the charts for height and weight. I mean, he's big. He's predicted to be 6'7". But if you don't know, you can go on our Facebook page and Twitter, and you will see that he decided that a piggy bank was not necessary, and that he could probably just swallow some money and save it for later. And luckily, and I think it's a miracle. This kid keeps cheating death, and I need him to stop because he's going to kill me. He swallowed a quarter, a nickel, and a penny all at the same time. So it wasn't like he swallowed the penny and was like, hey, not bad. Let's go ahead and swallow a quarter or a nickel and see what happens. And they swallowed the nickel and then no. All in his mouth all at the same time. None of our kids have ever done that, to where they really put a lot of things in their mouth. And it's not like he's a baby where, for those of you that have kids or, have babies and they start crawling around and, man, you're picking up everything. You're putting everything away. With him, he's 4.5. Like, he can talk. And thankfully he could talk, because he was able to come to us and say, I swallowed the money. And so then we're like, well, crap. What did you swallow? So we're like putting change in our hand, like, which one was it? And he's pointing at the penny, and we're kind of like, okay, but what does that mean? It's stuck in my throat. It's stuck in my throat. And he's breathing, and we're going, well, crap. Okay. And then at one point he was like, well, it's not stuck anymore. All right. We're good to go. But he's throwing up. I mean, he is just throwing up a ton, obviously, because, his body's trying to remove these coins, but he says they're not stuck. Well, maybe he's sick. So I take him to the walk-in clinic in Rigby, and I said, look, I think he swallowed it, not a big deal. He can poop it out later on, whatever. And we get to the x-ray tech, and they take the x-rays, and that's the images that you see. I took a picture with my phone. I'm like, holy crap. I mean, this thing, big, huge round. I mean, on an x-ray, the coins show up really, really bright, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, that is not a penny. That's got to be a quarter or something, And then you do the sideways x-ray, and you can see what looked like 3 distinct edges. And the big concern, I guess, from the doctors were that it was not a button battery, which I guess are notorious for kids swallowing, and they really burn their throats and can cause lots of damage, lots of long-term damage. So thankfully we got him to the hospital. The coins did not sit in such a way that it blocked his airway. I don't know how I would have got him out. Like, honestly, even the de-chokers, which we are going to order one now, I don't know that the Heimlich would have worked. Maybe that would have worked, but I mean, we were very lucky. We were very lucky. The doctors put him under, they ended up actually pushing the coins down into his stomach, and then pulled them out with a little net, I guess, somehow. Anyway, it was a long day, and I was super tired. I'm still super tired, because the stress of that kid is going to kill me one of these days. Some of you might remember a few years ago, he got bacterial pneumonia, and we were in the hospital for 5 days, and his oxygen had plummeted, and he looked, other than a miracle, I don't know how he survived that either. I'm like, dude, you are not a freaking cat. So thank you to everyone who is praying. He is good and back and and running around and destroying our house once again. So with that, we're going to take some precautions and I guess hide all the money and things that I didn't think he would actually try to swallow now, but he's promised me as soon as he woke up, as soon as I saw him, I said, "All right, buddy, no more eating money, right?" I promised, Dad. Like, oh goodness. So I appreciate that. The second thing is be sure to become a subscriber. You'll see down at the bottom there. That's ultimately, look, if you guys hate the mainstream media, you hate the nonstop liberal garbage that you have to see day in and day out from Idaho's media. We're the counter to that. We're still going to give you both sides of the story. And that was a change. One of the changes that we made on Veterans Day was we started running some tests going, okay, let's still tell both sides of the story, but let's give it a more conservative slant. We've done unbiased news for a really long time, and I think very successfully. We can do what the mainstream media should be. If the mainstream media was doing unbiased news, guess what? Idaho Dispatch would not be necessary. And they have not learned their lesson. They are only getting worse. The Idaho Statesman, the KTVB, the Idaho Press, Coeur d'Alene Press, the Moscow Pullman News, Idaho State Journal, Post Register, all of them, they're just getting worse and worse and worse. They're not learning their lesson that, hey, maybe we got to look and see what we're doing as a news organization that is causing all of these conservatives to hate us. Gee, I wonder what it is, calling everybody racist and fascist and Hitler people and all that kind of stuff that the national media is doing. The mainstream media has just replicated. And that's why I thought, man, we talked to a bunch of our subscribers that said, look, we want both sides of the story, but at this point, like we need someone to tell the conservative side and give conservatives a real voice here in Idaho, which we kind of do with the unbiased news that we were doing, but now it is going to have a more conservative slant to it when I write the articles or when we hopefully hire some people, which is kind of the ultimate goal, so that I'm not running the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance and the Idaho Dispatch all at the same time and killing myself trying to do both. And I love doing both. So don't get me wrong, I love doing both. It is exhausting, but at the end of the day, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing: is giving you guys good conservative news on top of running the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. So love my gun owners. I'm fighting for the 1A and the 2A. I guess that is what I say. So I appreciate you guys jumping in. We do have a few comments. Somebody said thanks. Glad he's okay. Absolutely glad he's okay. So this is a friend of mine that I interviewed quite a while ago that was affected by the jab that they try to force everyone to take. I've taken care of kids with swallowed stuff. They almost always poop it out. Yeah, they almost always do poop it out. Unfortunately, they got stuck in his throat. So it's going to be the most expensive 31 cents I have ever owned. So we are totally going to keep that money and give it to him when he's older. All right. So let's cover. Oh, wait, by the way. So I got some volunteers I'm going to give these mugs to. We got some new mugs. I posted this online. A friend of mine that did the dispatch car that did the wrap. I said, hey, I want some mugs for some volunteers that help me do the exit polling. And I've got a few extras. If this was like a huge hit and people wanted this thing, then maybe I'd order but you'd really got to order quite a few, probably like 100 of them to make it worth my while. I have no idea how to ship a mug, I'll be honest. It's going to be a pain in the butt. But anyway, so he wrapped it the same thing that he wrapped our car. So I thought the mugs are pretty cool. Now, right now, the cost of this mug, how many I bought, because I only got a dozen of them, would be a lot. And he actually didn't even charge me to his costs. I just paid for the cost of the mugs. But anyway, pretty cool mugs. Okay, let's get into some stories. Sorry, that was a lot more than when we do the recap. Typically, it's going to be jumping right into the stories, but I did want to cover some things that I felt were pretty important out the gate. So the article that I just posted today, and if you haven't seen it yet, it's called, the headline is, Did a Prop 1 volunteer get shot while gathering signatures? So if you guys haven't seen it, there's this video, and you can find it on YouTube. I don't know if it's anywhere else. It's on YouTube. the Idahoans for Open Primaries YouTube channel. And they have this 6.5 minute video celebrating getting destroyed, I guess. I mean, they didn't even come close in the election, right? It lost by almost 40%. Prop 1, which would have implemented ranked choice voting in the general election and created a top 4 jungle primary for the primary. And I'm watching this video, and at some point the narrator says, he's talking about the volunteers that go out and go door to door, knocking on doors, and they're gathering signatures and all this stuff. And he said, and sometimes they were told to buzz off or worse. And so he says, or worse, and I kid you not, this is the overlay that they put on the video. I'm going to put it on the screen here. Okay, so this sign says, warning, no trespassers, violators will be shot, survivors will be shot again. Now, I think most gun owners have probably seen this sign or a similar version of it. And I mean, in theory, it does actually work as a no trespassing sign. If this is on somebody's fence, it will serve as a no trespassing sign. But as gun owners know, you can't just shoot someone if they step foot on your property, right? There has to be, according to Idaho law, a reasonable expectation that serious bodily harm or death is about to come upon you or your family. So, on the one hand, if some guy steps on your property and he's carrying a gun in his hand, there's probably a reasonable expectation there that something bad is about to happen, and you would probably be justified. Yeah, always consult your attorney in using deadly force. Okay. Now, if you shoot that person, and let's say you hit them in the leg, they drop their gun, and they're kind of running away, and then you just unload on them in their back, odds are you're going to prison for a very long time. Okay. I mean, there's all sorts of nuances in there. But if you shot someone and you keep shooting until you feel the threat is neutralized, that is typically justified, right? If you shoot someone and they're not justified, or excuse me, and they're not dead, and you just decide to start shooting them for no reason, and the threat was neutral. I mean, there's a whole lot of issues and problems. Number one. Number two, you have to understand you can't just shoot someone if they come onto your property. Okay, if and in the article I put this, if the Mormon missionaries or Jehovah's Witnesses or some political person comes onto your property and just decides, they're going to come to your door to, get a petition, or they're dropping off, you can't just shoot them. That's not a thing. You will absolutely go to prison for shooting someone that's, again, a missionary or whatever coming to your property. Now, if you say no trespassing, no solicitors, all that, and they ignore that and they come on your property, sure, you can call the police and you can have them trespassed off, and they'll be charged with trespassing. And then there's a whole process that goes into that. But you can't just shoot someone. So what I'm curious about is, if they're going to show that particular sign and put that in their video that says sometimes things even worse happened than just somebody telling them to buzz off, like, what happened? Because I don't remember any news articles coming out. I don't remember any posts from their Twitter account or Facebook or anything like that said one of their supporters was threatened with a gun or was shot and then survived, but then they just kept shooting at. Like, I don't remember anything like that happening. So if that's the case, I want to know. Like, please let us know, because I'd be really curious. Number one. Number two, if all that happened was that picture came from someone's actual fence that one of their supporters did, like, did they just walk by and they're like, well, I want to go on this property, but there's this sign here, and this is a threat to Prop 1 people in particular. No, it's just a no trespassing sign for everyone. So anyway, kind of in my opinion, a ridiculous argument that they are making um, in that video. But I'd be really curious what the rest of their details were. The second story that we're going to talk about is the Peruvian story, and this one has garnered quite a bit of attention because I'll be honest, the illegal immigrant issue in Idaho hasn't really been covered by the mainstream media. They don't want to talk about it because, quite frankly, they don't care. I got curious about this back in October because of two things. There was a video that came from James O'Keefe's new documentary where some guys were saying they're from Peru and they were assigned to go to Idaho. Assigned by who? I don't know. My guess would be probably some nonprofits that told them to come here. And then there was a tweet by Theo Wold, who is a former Trump advisor and an Idahoan, and he said, "Hey, there's like hundreds of Peruvians in Ketchum." I thought, well, holy crap, Ketchum it's a small town. So if there's hundreds of Peruvians in Ketchum, which has 3,500 people in it, that's a lot of people. Like that is a massive increase into Ketchum's population. And so I thought, I was kind of waiting for the election to be over because this was in late October, mid-October, late October. And I wanted to go and take a look and see what I could find, but I waited until the election was over. And so after the election's over, I drive down to Ketchum on, I want to say Veterans Day, if I remember. And I apologize, my eyes, I'm running on not a lot of sleep. So I drive down to Ketchum, and I thought, okay, this has got to be really fascinating because I don't, it seems like there's hundreds of Peruvians there who would be noticeable in a town like Ketchum. Look, I live in Rigby. The Hispanic population of Rigby is about 10%. And you see people that look like they're of Hispanic origin in Rigby, but you also see way more white people, right? I mean, it's, again, 90% white people in Rigby, mostly, out of 5,000 people, okay? And you do see Hispanic people here. It's not a big deal, but it's just not a large chunk of the population like when I lived in Caldwell, where there was a much, much higher percentage of Hispanic people. And so I go to Ketchum. I stay the night there. At that night, I go to a gas station, and in the gas station, I walk in. It's a smaller gas station, and I think it was the only one open at the time. And I talked to an individual, and he tells me that ever since Biden took office, there was just a steady, pretty big flow of Peruvians and people from other South American countries that have come to the Ketchum area. So that'd be Ketchum and Bellevue and Haley and Cary and some of these other towns. And so he didn't say that there was any, like some big caravan that came up. It was just kind of like people just kind of kept coming. And I'm walking around this gas station and I see a section of the store that has all Spanish food. So there are snacks that have in America that are Spanish names, but they're like created with English ingredients and English descriptions and all that kind of stuff. They have a Spanish name. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, but like when I lived in Japan, I could buy snacks in certain parts of the U.S. So if I go to San Francisco or Portland or Seattle, where there's a higher percentage of Japanese people, there are stores that have snacks that are in all Japanese, right? And unless you knew Japanese, you wouldn't know what they were. Same thing in this gas station in Ketchum. There is a section of the store, and it's huge in comparison to what you would expect. But there's a section, and it's got all the snacks are in all Spanish. And I thought, okay, that's an interesting sign that maybe there are a lot of people here who are Spanish speaking. Because we went to my wife went to all of the gas stations. I've been to most of the gas stations. Actually, I think I've been to all the gas stations in Rigby, and it has a higher population of Spanish speaking people. And I've never seen a gas station in Rigby have a section with all Spanish snacks. And again, I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me. It's America, create whatever you want. It was just oh, this is interesting because I've never seen anything like this. Even in Caldwell has some markets that are all Spanish, but the Hispanic population, according to the census, is like 25%, right? Out of 60,000 people, that's a lot of Spanish speaking people. And so you would expect to see something like that in Caldwell. I don't remember honestly seeing that in any Caldwell gas station. There might be. I just don't remember. I didn't go to every gas station in Caldwell. But to see that in Ketchum, a town with 3,500 people and the Hispanic population was like 6%, that would typically, as a business owner, not be something that would be advisable because you're probably not going to get a whole lot of stuff unless there is a massive influx of people coming from South American countries where those Spanish snacks would sell very well, right? So that's all that part of the article was really about. So would somebody say, yeah, so prove somebody, and I don't know who this is. Obviously, they're watching from YouTube, it looks like. Here, I'll throw that up there. Peruvians visa holders are assigned to work on Idaho sheep operations. Maybe some of them are. That's possible. And I'm not being hysterical. Look, if you go and talk to the people there, they'll tell you that a lot of them are working on construction jobs. They're not assigned to sheep operations. And if you go to the construction sites, there were lots of Hispanic people there. If you go to, so you got some hysterical leftists on YouTube commenting. That's okay. I appreciate the feedback. So look, so here, I'll just throw it up here, just so everybody can see what I'm looking at here. You're only discovering now that Hispanic food sections of stores. Look, I don't speak Spanish, so she's probably saying something horrible. That's okay. You can always go and get your leftist news somewhere else. Look, a Hispanic section of a store is not uncommon in places with much higher populations of Hispanic people. Okay. Much higher populations of Hispanic people. That's not uncommon. However, it is uncommon in a place that is like 95% white. That would not be normal. So I went that night, I got a tip from someone who lives in Haley and said, hey, there are a bunch of Peruvians that live down in Haley. Again, my goal in going there was just to find out, is this real? Is there really that many Peruvians that have come to the Blaine County area, which, by the way, is a very expensive place to live. It's when my family moved from Caldwell down to Rigby, guess what? We looked all over the state. We looked in the Blaine County area because I love the mountains. I love to go hiking. Can't do it too much anymore because of my back, but I love to go hiking. And so I thought, hey, let's go look at the Blaine County area. And it was way too expensive for us to live there. How the heck are poor Peruvians who are coming from poor country, don't have any money? How are they going to make it in a place like Blaine County because of the cost of living? It is so expensive. It's expensive to live almost anywhere in Idaho, let alone Blaine County. How are they going to do that? And if they're all herding sheep, how in the world are they doing that herding sheep? Like, that's not statistically, that does not make sense. And so I wanted to go take a look, see what was happening. The next day I went and visited a facility that had two buildings. It was a former living quarters. And I went in and talked to some of the people that live there, without disclosing, too much about who I was talking to, because my goal was just to find out what was going on. The one individual in one of the buildings said that it was about 95% Peruvian. This particular person was not Peruvian, but they're good friends with the people that lived on the facility. And they said, yeah, the 95% of Peruvians, most of them are working under the table, construction jobs. If you haven't been to the Ketchum or Haley area, there's a whole bunch of construction there. So they're working construction jobs. Maybe some of them are herding sheep for my leftists there while watching on Twitter, or excuse me, on YouTube. That may be a possibility, but look, a lot of them. And by the way, that person said many of them are there illegally. Okay. Their words, not mine. I don't know. I didn't go around knocking on all the the rooms of those doors trying to ask about people's immigration status. But the other two individuals I talked to in the other building, guess what? They also said many of the people that were there illegally. Again, I didn't go ask. I don't know. But that many people coming across our border illegally over the last 4 years, odds are a bunch of them ended up all over the place, including in somewhere like Idaho. That's the goal of talking to these folks and finding out what was happening, what's really going on, and if in that one facility there were over 100 Peruvians, then odds are a whole bunch of other Peruvians are in the area. How are they surviving? My guess would be based on talking to the people there. Like, for instance, in that retirement home, okay, it's a 200 to 300 square foot room, and they are putting 4 to 6 people per room. So basically, you have enough room to bunk, maybe a little nightstand to put stuff on. I don't know, but 4 to 6 people per room, or you've got a family of 3, 4, 5 people living in a 200 to 300 square foot room. Okay, that's how I would assume most of them are able to kind of afford living there. Because if you take those particular rooms were $1,600 per room. There is 4 people in the room. Well, it becomes much more manageable to live there doing that. Okay, and the police that we spoke to, the law enforcement that we spoke to, said the same thing. They'll go to a house, which is a lower income house. And there will just be tons and tons of people crammed in this two bedroom room, 3 bedroom room, and they'll have a whole bunch of guys with cots and everything else living in these rooms. Okay, so are there a whole bunch of Peruvians living in the Blaine County area? It would appear so. Again, I don't know their immigration status. My guess would be that there is a large chunk that are here illegally that came across the border when the Biden administration just said, "Screw it, everybody come in, whoever wants to come in." You can't say that hasn't happened. So, anyway, all right, let's go to our last story that we will cover for now. Is on the Fremont County Sheriff's Office. Some of you may remember the story. It started back, I want to say, in late August, early September. There was a story that we broke about some Fremont County Sheriff's Office phones that got disposed of in a public landfill. I want to say landfill. Don't think of the dump trucks that go to the big mounds of trash and just dump everything out and somebody found all the phones. No, these were put in a landfill that has a separate area for electronics and stuff like that. And if you've never been to some of these landfills, like for instance in Idaho Falls, you can go to the transfer station and there's a metal bin and there's various bins, cardboard bins and stuff like that. There's various bins that you can put stuff in, and then everything else does get dumped into this pit, and then they take it from there and I assume go dump it somewhere. It's a transfer station, right? But it does have some separate bins. So at the Fremont County landfill, there is a bin for electronics. And what had happened was, allegedly, I believe there's still an investigation going. The Fremont County Sheriff's Office dumped these phones back in 2022 into the electronics bin, which citizens, I am told by multiple people, they go and they sift through these bins and they pick stuff out. Okay. And nobody cares, right? Nobody has had an issue with them picking stuff out. The people who run the place apparently don't care and allow it to happen. And nothing really wrong with that, but there is something wrong with this particular story because those cell phones were not destroyed and they were not wiped clean of their data. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand, how in the world did you not think that maybe we should factory reset these at the very least, or smash them with a hammer, because they are law enforcement phones. I don't think anyone knew that when they were getting the phones out of the trash. I think someone just thought, oh, hey, a whole bunch of cell phones. Because if you find a cell phone that still turns on, you can use it and make it work and use it as your cell phone. Well, that's what happened. And some of these cell phones ended up in the hands, allegedly, of some cartel members. And so we ran a story about that, couldn't ever get any feedback from law enforcement. So we finally asked the sheriff's office, like, hey, do you not have a policy that says here's how these phones have to be destroyed? And we eventually got a letter from where it is. Yeah, I don't have it on. It's buried in here somewhere. My desk is a mountain of papers and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, so we asked them, like, hey, what was your policy for destroying electronic equipment? Eventually, the prosecutor's office came back and said, hey, you know, everything you're asking for is all exempt from the public records. And I thought, that doesn't seem like something that should be exempt. And so we were ready to kind of go to court. And I honestly believe a judge would have agreed with us and said, yeah, you can't exempt some policy from a records request. And eventually the prosecutor emailed us back and said, look, there is no policy. It did not exist. So that story has finally been settled in terms of understanding that back in the day, there was no policy. Now, I reached out to the sheriff's office again, and I just said, as Sheriff Len Humphreys, who by all accounts is a good conservative sheriff, and he is just not wanting, he hasn't said anything. We're just like, hey, all I think the public wants to know is, have you made a change? Have you made the necessary changes to ensure that in the future, if you're disposing of a cell phone or a computer or any kind of electronic equipment that would have sensitive data on it, have you destroyed that information to make sure that that stuff, because these phones had pictures that officers had taken at crime scenes, driver's license numbers, pictures like of people's driver's licenses. There were images and videos of minors on there. The school resource officer, the phone that we observed, because it was a school resource officer phone, nothing bad, okay, nothing nefarious from the guy. It wasn't even his fault. Obviously, that whoever got all the phones didn't destroy them. All of that stuff was all in there. And including an app which allowed someone who had the phone and had this access to this app, they could track law enforcement, ambulance drivers, fire trucks, EMT, like everybody you could, from multiple counties, from Jefferson County and from Madison County, you could see where they were in real time, which was a serious breach of security. Okay, having been in Iraq, having had a secret security clearance, understanding OPSEC, operational security, massive breach of security. And so with the latest update on that story was that we found out they did not have a policy in place. And hopefully they have it fixed. I think that's all the public is wanting to know. Is that fixed? Have we fixed that issue? So anyway, all right. That's all I've got for this episode of the recap. Again, if you want to go have some fun with the leftists on YouTube that are, this person keeps arguing about like where all the Peruvians are. And I'm like, I'm not saying there are Peruvians doing sheep herding. I'm sure there are. But guess what? There's a whole bunch of others. There is not enough sheep herding to be done for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Peruvians that are living in the Blaine County area. There's just not. And quite frankly, when people in the town are telling me that they're doing service industry jobs, they're doing construction jobs, they're doing all that stuff, I'm going to believe the people I actually went and talked to, okay, that they're not all just out living with the sheep. Like, that's not a thing. So I'm not saying that there aren't some of them doing that. I'm saying that's not all of them. Good grief. Okay. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Please be sure, again, to subscribe. Help us continue to grow. I'd love to. There are so many stories. I can't do them all on my own. At the end of the day, until we have, 3,000, 4,000 monthly subscribers or annual subscribers, it's going to be very difficult for us to cover all of the stories across the state that we need to cover to counter the mainstream media garbage that you guys get on a consistent basis. So please be sure to subscribe. The link is right down there, scrolling across the bottom of your screen there. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Take care.